The story follows King Oba and his son Offa in the kingdom of Were. Offa falls in love with Amah, but betrays her for another woman. Amah publicly shames Offa, and when Oba finds out, he confronts Amah at the market square, ultimately leading to her death. The story explores the themes of power dynamics, love, and betrayal, and their consequences on the kingdom and its people. In the kingdom of Were, where the sun dipped into the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, King Oba ruled with great power and wisdom. His son Offa was known for his charm and charisma, and his love for Amah, the most beautiful girl in the village, was well known. But little did anyone know, Offa's heart would soon belong to another, setting off a chain of events that would change the kingdom forever. In the heart of Western Africa, where the sun dipped into the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, lay the kingdom of Were. This ancient land was home to a people rich in tradition and culture, with a history that stretched back centuries. The kingdom was ruled by King Oba, a just and fair ruler who was loved by his people. King Oba's son, Offa, was a young man with a charming smile and a charismatic personality. He was known throughout the kingdom for his bravery, intelligence, and kindness. Offa's love for Amah, the most beautiful girl in the village, was well known. Amah was a kind and gentle soul, with a heart full of love for Offa. The kingdom of Were was a place of vibrant colors and sounds, where the air was filled with the scent of exotic spices and the sound of drums echoed through the streets. The people of Were were a proud and noble folk, with a deep connection to their land and their traditions. Offa's relationship with Amah was a passionate and all-consuming one. He loved her with all his heart, and she loved him just as deeply. But little did anyone know, Offa's heart would soon belong to another, setting off a chain of events that would change the kingdom forever. As the days passed, Offa's feelings for Amah began to wane. He started to notice other women in the kingdom, and his eyes began to wander. Amah, sensing Offa's change in behavior, tried to hold on to him, but it was too late. Offa's heart had already been captured by another woman, a beautiful and cunning girl named Ezin. Ezin was a master manipulator, with a tongue as sweet as honey and a heart as cold as stone. She had set her sights on Offa, and she would stop at nothing to win him over. Offa, blinded by his desire for Ezin, did not see the danger that lay ahead. As Offa's relationship with Ezin deepened, his relationship with Amah began to crumble. Amah, heartbroken and betrayed, tried to confront Offa, but he pushed her away. The once strong bond between them was now broken, and the consequences of Offa's actions would be severe. The kingdom of Were was about to be torn apart by the actions of one man, and the fate of Amah and Offa's relationship would never be the same again. The people of Were were a diverse and vibrant group, with a rich cultural heritage. They were farmers, traders, and artisans, living in harmony with the land and their traditions. They were a proud and noble folk, with a deep connection to their history and their customs. The kingdom's people were also fiercely loyal to King Oba, who had ruled them with wisdom and justice. They respected his authority and followed his laws, knowing that he had their best interest at heart. But the kingdom's people were not just passive subjects. They were also active participants in the kingdom's affairs, with their own thoughts and opinions. They would soon be drawn into the conflict between Offa and Amah, and their reactions would shape the course of events. The stakes were high in the kingdom of Were. Offa's betrayal of Amah had set off a chain reaction, and the consequences of his actions would be severe. Amah's heart was broken, and her pride was wounded. She would not let Offa's betrayal go unpunished. King Oba, too, would play a role in the unfolding drama. His reaction to Offa's betrayal and Amah's public shaming would determine the course of events. Would he stand by his son, or would he uphold justice and punish Offa for his actions? The kingdom of Ware was about to be torn apart by the actions of one man, and the fate of Amah and Offa's relationship would never be the same again. The stakes were high, and the consequences would be severe. As the days turned into weeks, Offa's betrayal of Amah became more and more apparent. Amah, heartbroken and betrayed, tried to confront Offa, but he pushed her away, denying any wrongdoing. The once strong bond between them was now broken, and the consequences of Offa's actions would be severe. Amah, determined to expose Offa's infidelity, began to spread the word about his betrayal. She told her friends and family about Offa's relationship with Ezen, and soon, the entire kingdom knew about Offa's infidelity. Offa, realizing that his secret was out, became increasingly defensive and hostile towards Amah. The tension between Offa and Amah continued to build, and soon, it became a public spectacle. The people of Ware would gather in the market square, watching and whispering about the drama unfolding before their eyes. Amah, determined to shame Offa publicly, would often confront him in public, accusing him of betrayal and infidelity. Offa, fueled by his pride and ego, would retaliate, denying any wrongdoing and accusing Amah of being possessive and controlling. The conflict between them was escalating, and it seemed that nothing could stop it. King Oba, who had been watching the drama unfold from a distance, began to take notice. He was disappointed in Offa's behavior and concerned about the impact it was having on the kingdom. He knew that he had to intervene, but he was unsure of how to handle the situation. As the conflict between Offa and Amah continued to escalate, the kingdom's people began to take sides. Some supported Offa, believing that he was the victim of Amah's possessiveness. Others supported Amah, believing that she had been wronged by Offa's betrayal. The division in the kingdom was growing, and it seemed that the conflict between Offa and Amah would soon tear the kingdom apart. The stakes were high, and the consequences would be severe. Amah, determined to shame Offa publicly, decided to take matters into her own hands. She organized a public gathering in the market square, where she would confront Offa about his betrayal. The entire kingdom was invited, and it seemed that everyone would be there to witness the drama unfold. Offa, realizing that he was about to be publicly shamed, became increasingly anxious. He knew that he had wronged Amah, and he was unsure of how to defend himself. He tried to avoid the gathering, but it was too late. Amah had already spread the word, and the kingdom's people were eager to see the confrontation. The day of the gathering arrived, and the market square was packed with people. Amah stood tall, her voice ringing out across the square as she accused Offa of betrayal and infidelity. Offa, standing opposite her, looked defensive and guilty, unable to meet Amah's accusing gaze. The confrontation was intense, with both parties shouting and accusing each other. The kingdom's people watched in awe, some of them cheering and jeering, while others looked on in shock and horror. King Oba, who had been watching from a distance, finally intervened, stepping forward to restore order. He scolded both Offa and Amah, telling them that their behavior was unbecoming and that they needed to resolve their differences in private. But the damage had already been done. The public shaming had taken place, and Offa's reputation had been tarnished. Amah, though vindicated, knew that she had lost Offa forever. The kingdom's people, too, would never forget the drama that had unfolded in the market square. The consequences of Offa's actions would be severe, and the kingdom of Ware would never be the same again. The stakes were high, and the fate of Amah and Offa's relationship would never be the same again. The confrontation between Offa and Amah had left a deep scar on the kingdom of Ware. The public shaming had been a spectacle that would be remembered for a long time, and the consequences of Offa's actions would be severe. King Oba, who had intervened in the confrontation, knew that he had to take further action to restore order to the kingdom. As the days passed, King Oba's anger towards Offa grew. He was disappointed in his son's behavior and felt that he had let the kingdom down. He knew that he had to teach Offa a lesson, but he was unsure of how to do it. One day, King Oba summoned Offa to his chambers. Offa, knowing that he was in trouble, arrived at the chambers with a sense of trepidation. King Oba looked at him with a stern expression, his eyes blazing with anger. Offa, my son, King Oba said, his voice firm but controlled. I am deeply disappointed in your behavior. You have brought shame to our family and to the kingdom. You must take responsibility for your actions and make amends. Offa looked down, unable to meet his father's gaze. He knew that he had wronged Amah and that he had let the kingdom down. He was unsure of how to make amends, but he knew that he had to try. King Oba's words had a profound effect on Offa. He realized that he had been selfish and arrogant, and that he had hurt the people he cared about most. He knew that he had to change, but he was unsure of where to start. As Offa reflected on his actions, he began to see the error of his ways. He realized that he had been blind to the consequences of his actions, and that he had hurt Amah deeply. He knew that he had to make things right, but he was unsure of how to do it. Meanwhile, Amah was struggling to come to terms with the public shaming. She had exposed Offa's infidelity, but at what cost? She had lost Offa forever, and she had become the subject of gossip and speculation in the kingdom. Amah knew that she had to move on, but she was unsure of how to do it. She felt betrayed and hurt, and she didn't know if she could ever trust anyone again. She knew that she had to focus on herself and her own healing, but it was hard to do so when the kingdom was still reeling from the drama. As the kingdom's people began to heal from the drama, they started to take sides. Some supported Offa, believing that he had been wronged by Amah's possessiveness. Others supported Amah, believing that she had been wronged by Offa's betrayal. The division in the kingdom was growing, and it seemed that the conflict between Offa and Amah would soon tear the kingdom apart. The stakes were high, and the consequences would be severe. King Oba knew that he had to take action to restore order to the kingdom. He decided to call a gathering of the kingdom's elders and advisors to discuss the situation. The gathering was held in the throne room, with King Oba presiding over the meeting. Offa and Amah were both present, as well as the kingdom's elders and advisors. King Oba outlined the situation and asked for the opinions of the elders and advisors. Some suggested that Offa should be punished for his actions, while others believed that Amah had been wronged and deserved justice. After listening to the opinions of the elders and advisors, King Oba made a decision. He would confront Amah in the market square, and he would make sure that justice was served. The kingdom's people were shocked by King Oba's decision. They knew that he was a just ruler, but they also knew that he was fiercely protective of his family. They wondered what would happen when King Oba confronted Amah. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation, one that would determine the fate of Offa and Amah's relationship and the kingdom of Ware. The stakes were high, and the consequences would be severe. The confrontation between King Oba and Amah. Amah in the market square was a dramatic and intense moment. King Oba, fueled by his anger and sense of justice, approached Amah with a stern expression. Amah, knowing that she was about to face the king's wrath, stood tall and proud, her head held high. The market square was packed with people, all of whom were eager to see the confrontation between King Oba and Amah. They whispered and murmured among themselves, speculating about what would happen next. King Oba's anger was palpable as he approached Amah. He was furious with Offa's behavior, and he was determined to make sure that justice was served. He looked at Amah with a stern expression, his eyes blazing with anger. Amah, King Oba said, his voice firm but controlled. "You have shamed my son and brought dishonor to our family. You must be punished for your actions." Amah looked up at King Oba, her eyes flashing with defiance. "I did what was necessary," she said, her voice steady. "Offa's infidelity was a public matter, and I had to expose him." King Oba's expression turned cold and hard. "You will pay for your impertinence," he said, his voice dripping with menace. And with that, King Oba struck Amah down, his blow sending her crashing to the ground. The market square erupted into chaos, with people screaming and running for cover. The aftermath of King Oba's actions was severe. Amah's body was taken away, and the kingdom was left to mourn the loss of a young woman who had been wronged by Offa's betrayal. Offa, realizing what his father had done, was consumed by guilt and grief. He knew that he was responsible for Amah's death, and he was filled with remorse. The kingdom's people were shocked and outraged by King Oba's actions. They knew that he was a just ruler, but they also knew that he had gone too far. They whispered among themselves, speculating about the consequences of King Oba's actions. As the days passed, the kingdom of Were was plunged into darkness and despair. The people were mourning the loss of Amah, and they were fearful of King Oba's wrath. Offa, too, was struggling to come to terms with what had happened. He knew that he was responsible for Amah's death, and he was filled with guilt and remorse. The consequences of King Oba's actions would be severe. The kingdom would never be the same again, and the memory of Amah's death would haunt them for generations to come. The kingdom of Were would never be the same again. The memory of Amah's death would haunt them for generations to come, a reminder of the consequences of King Oba's actions. Offa, too, would never be the same again. He was consumed by guilt and remorse, knowing that he was responsible for Amah's death. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, the kingdom's people began to realize the full extent of King Oba's actions. They saw how his behavior had changed, how he had become more tyrannical and ruthless. They knew that they had to be careful, that they had to avoid crossing King Oba at all costs. Offa, on the other hand, was struggling to come to terms with what had happened. He knew that he was responsible for Amah's death, and he was filled with guilt and remorse. He began to question his father's actions, wondering if he had been too harsh. The kingdom's people began to whisper among themselves, speculating about the future of the kingdom. Some believed that King Oba's actions would lead to the downfall of the kingdom, while others believed that he would restore order and stability. As the months turned into years, the kingdom of Were became a shadow of its former self. The people lived in fear of King Oba, and Offa's guilt and remorse continued to haunt him. The memory of Amah's death would never be forgotten, and the kingdom would always be reminded of the consequences of King Oba's actions. The legacy of King Oba's actions would be a complex one. Some would remember him as a just ruler who had taken drastic action to maintain order, while others would remember him as a tyrant who had brought suffering and despair to the kingdom. Offa, too, would have to live with the legacy of his actions. He would have to come to terms with what had happened and find a way to make amends. He knew that he could never bring Amah back, but he could try to make things right in other ways. The kingdom of Were would never forget the story of Offa and Amah, a story of love, betrayal, and tragedy. It would be a reminder of the consequences of actions, and the importance of justice and compassion. In the end, the kingdom of Were would emerge from the darkness and despair, but it would never be the same again. The memory of Amah's death would haunt them for generations to come, a reminder of the importance of justice, compassion, and accountability. The story of Offa and Amah would be told and retold for generations to come, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of accountability. It would serve as a reminder of the consequences of our actions, and the importance of treating others with kindness and respect. And so, the kingdom of Were would move forward, forever changed by the events that had transpired. The legacy of King Oba's actions would be a complex one, but it would serve as a reminder of the importance of justice, compassion, and accountability. Moral lessons. The story of Offa and Amah teaches us many valuable lessons about the importance of accountability, justice, and compassion. King Oba's actions demonstrate the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of accountability. When leaders abuse their power, it can lead to devastating consequences, as seen in the kingdom of Were. The story highlights the importance of justice and fairness in our actions. King Oba's failure to balance justice with compassion led to tragic consequences, and the kingdom suffered as a result. The story also shows the importance of compassion and empathy in our relationships with others. Offa's lack of compassion and empathy towards Amah led to her death, and the kingdom was forever changed. The consequences of our actions. The story of Offa and Amah serves as a reminder of the consequences of our actions. Our choices and decisions can have far-reaching effects, and we must consider the potential outcomes before acting. The importance of accountability. Finally, the story teaches us about the importance of accountability. Leaders and individuals must be held accountable for their actions, and we must strive to create a culture of accountability in our communities. These moral lessons can be applied to our everyday lives, reminding us of the importance of justice, compassion, and accountability. By learning from the story of Offa and Amah, we can strive to create a more just and compassionate society. As we reflect on the story of Offa and Amah, we are reminded of the importance of considering the consequences of our actions. We must strive to create a culture of accountability and compassion, where leaders and individuals are held to high standards of behavior. By doing so, we can build stronger, more just communities, where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. The story of Offa and Amah serves as a reminder of the importance of these values, and we can learn from their experiences to create a better future for ourselves and others.